All right, that's 8 o'clock. Let's get started. So first, I want to start with the introduction. My name is Sean Liu. I'm currently a rising senior at Montgomery High School. So next year, that's going to be my 12th grade. I have participated in the US ABO recently. Most recently, I've gotten into the US ABO semifinals. We'll talk about what that is in a little bit. Basically, that's top 400 in rank nationally. That's a little bit about me and my background. I've also taken AP Bio. Results for that will be coming out soon for me. And yeah, that's a little bit about me, but let's get right into it. What USABO is, how can I help you prepare, and how can you help yourself prepare? All right, let's just get into it. First things first, this current workshop that you're in is part of a series hosted by the Logistem Foundation. Currently, we're on our fourth Olympiad workshop out of 8. So far, you see which ones we've done in previous days and which ones are upcoming. You can always check up our website, logistem.club, and you'll see the full list of Olympiad workshops available when you can sign up for them. Once you sign up, you'll have the Zoom link just like this one. And these are great workshops, especially if you're interested in any of these subjects, computing in particular, very exciting, mathematics, you might be able to find a new interest here. So I really do suggest attending our workshops. If you're unable to attend, you can always check out the videos on our website. We'll have recordings of the workshops there. All right, let's get right into it. USABO. First things first, you gotta know where the website is. So with the USABO website, it's pretty simple. Just https://www.usabo-trc.org. The TRC meaning Teacher Resource Center. Here I have circled the login area, which is probably the most important part of this website screen. Of course, you have the 2021 USA by Olympiad team, and we're also run by Center for Excellence in Education. But focusing back up to this login screen, once you register for the Olympiad, the USA Olympiad, you'll be given your own username and password, and that's where you're going to be logging in. You want to keep that username and password very safe, both before, during, and after the competition, because all the info that you have, including your score and potential placements, that'll all be associated with your account, and you'll have to log in to access any and all of that information. I'm going to head to the website real quick, just to show you guys around a little bit. So this is the website itself. There's some information about the USABO, some news, things like that. Student registration, that is right here. You can see that it says see you in 2022. So next year, if you're wanting to take this test, come to this website and you'll have your information right here once they've updated everything. Keep in mind that for the first round, the local round of the USA by Olympiad, your teachers will be involved with that. There's the teachers and administrators only part. And some information. Up here, you'll see that there's the USABO student corner. There's some general information here, how to study, things like that. That might be pretty useful to you, and you can check that out right here. The teacher corner is more for the teachers. What is the USABO? There's quite a bit of information here, some of which we'll go over today. Some of the more specific information like eligibility or something, maybe you want to check that out on your own time. So that's going to be right here for you. So once again, that's usabo-trc.org. All right, so moving on. Now let's talk about the USABO exam level. So what is there to this particular competition? Everyone's going to be starting at the local round. So the local round is basically you're going to be going to your school. Maybe your school offers this test. Then you'll be registering for the USABO exam at your school. For registration policies and steps, that's going to be school dependent. So you'll have to contact your school and figure it out there. I know in my school, there's the Montgomery STEM board who runs all the registration. There's a Google form and all that. Pretty straightforward. For other schools, it might be different. So you do want to check in with your school science administration. Potentially your school is not running this particular competition. That's no reason to worry. There are plenty local institutions that are running the competitions, such as local academies, things like that. You can also perhaps even propose to your science supervisor or science administration to add this test to the agenda. That's also a cool option that you can consider. But anyway, once you're registered for the local round, usually the test is going to be around February to March. In terms of preparation, that's going to be the date range you're going to be aiming for. So once you're registered, you're going to be competing in a test with 50 minutes for 50 questions. It's a pretty tight schedule. These questions are kind of long. We'll take a look at that in a little bit. And everyone above a certain cutoff score is going to move to the semifinal round. So if you know about other competitions such as US NCO for the chemistry Olympiad, there's also an additional policy of top 2 in your school. That's not going to be applying here. You just need to make it above a certain cutoff score. The cutoff score changes every year. Out of 50, it's typically maybe a 20-ish, or sometimes a little bit lower, sometimes a little bit higher. It's been as high as 29 in previous years. Generally, you want to get above 30, and then you can feel pretty assured that you'll be able to make it to the next round. That's just my suggestion, 30 out of 50. That's a solid place to be. All right, now moving on to the semifinal round. Now you're competing with the top 400 to 500 students in the nation. So this is the quite literally the best of the best. There's going to be over 100 multiple choice and free response questions, and you'll have 3 hours to complete all of this in one sitting. For other kinds of competitions, there's the multiple choice section and free response section, and these are separate with different times and things like that. For USABO, it's a little bit more simple. It's just 3 hours. You get the entire test, and you just do as much as you can. Top 20 are then ranked, and then they can enter training camp. One thing I want to note for the previous year, it's been a little bit different because of the COVID-19 pandemic, the way they ran the competition. First of all, they let everyone taking the local round advance to the semifinal round instead of just the top 400 to 500. They still were ranking the top 400 to 500, but everyone was able to take the test. The test was virtual, of course, and the policies in general were a little bit more lenient because everyone's circumstances are different, right? For next year, I suspect that they'll be returning full on to everything that they've done pre-pandemic. So that means you'll probably be traveling to a certain university, a local university, and you'll be taking your 3-hour test there. It'll be all pencil and paper, that kind of stuff. All right, top 20 are ranked and they enter training camp. Now we're starting to get into the training camp and International Biology Olympiad. So that's IBO. And now in the training camp, if you're able to make it to this level, you are truly very advanced at biology. So you're going to learn top-notch skills from national coaches, so people who train these stellar students year after year. And then you might take another test determining top 4 out of the top 20. And it's these top 4 that travel internationally to compete. And previous locations for the USABO have been all over the globe, really. Much in Europe, much in Asia. So it's really exciting to be able to represent your nation like that. All right, going back to semifinal round, one other note I want to make about that. When I say 100 plus multiple choice and FRQ questions, the thing with the USABO is that it's a little more relaxed with its policies from year to year. With the USNCO, there's like a very certain specific certain number of questions you can expect, some stylistic things you can expect. With the USABO, it's completely different year after year. When I say 100 plus, I literally just mean 100 plus, somewhere above 100. Usually around 120 multiple choice, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less. For free response, there could be anywhere from 3 questions to I've seen 20 questions, and all different kinds of lengths. Sometimes it's filling in charts, sometimes it's completing statements, sometimes it's analyzing diagrams, all different kinds of things. For example, with the this year, on virtually, we had 120 multiple choice questions, and then we had 6 true false questions, and then we had around 15 or so free response short answer kind of questions. Year after year, it's going to be a different format. All right, any questions? I'm going to take a quick breather and wait for the chat to fill up with any questions that you guys may have. If you have any questions while I'm explaining, always feel free to just put in the chat, private message me, or to everyone, and I'll answer it when I have the moment. All right, any questions? What is the best way to learn for this? I do love that question. We'll be getting into that in a little bit. I've got several slides prepared for that. It's part of our discussion today, how to prepare for the USABO. All right, let's keep on going. So here's a list of topics. This is what the USABO lists on their own website. You can find this information there. So as you can see, basically everything you can imagine about biology, anatomy and physiology. And notice it's animal anatomy, physiology. So you got to look beyond the humans. You might need to look at, say, a grasshopper. What's the structure of a grasshopper leg? I've seen that question before on previous tests. Cell biology, they go really in depth with cell biology. So a lot of information, very detailed information to know. Genetics and evolution, you guys can probably imagine what that entails. Darwin's hypothesis, natural selection, all that kind of stuff. Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium, that's part of genetics. Punnett squares, things like that. Plant anatomy and physiology, so the structure of plants and beyond plants too. So like green algae, structure of green algae, all different kinds of things, really. Ecology, there's all of that. Ethology, that's more about the behavior of animals. So there's also that in the test. And biosystematics, that might involve biotechnology and some other kinds of more technical terms. And you can see the percentages of topics there as well, with for everything from 25% to 5%. I just got a question in the chat. What are the requirements for entering the contest? Basically none. I think there might be certain restrictions about you have to be a high school student. That I think would vary from location to location depending on their policies. And you can check full details for rules and eligibility at the website. That is usabo-trc.org. They have all the details there if you want more specifics. But for example, me being in high school, I did not run into any problems with eligibility, any kinds of requirements. Of course, there's the preparation requirement, but that's more for yourself than for anyone else. Any other questions? All right, let's keep on going. So that's a list of topics. Here's some sample questions. This is from the local round. I took these all from the 2017. So that gives you a bit of a sense of what kinds of length there might be involved with certain questions. A few things I want to point your attention to. First thing is with this question 2. That's a pretty big, thick question to start off your competition with. A lot of details about the Zika virus, which you might not know too many details about, but you're going to read the explanation, right? But then you go all the way to the last sentence and you say, in the classic immune response, which cells are primarily responsible for the production of antibodies? Now, maybe you read the entire question and maybe you didn't. Maybe you just skipped to the last line, because it turns out that all this explanation is not very useful for the question. The question is just asking for the classic immune response, no specifics about the Zika virus. So that kind of illustrates sometimes with USABO questions, it's a bit of a reading game. You gotta know what is the focus of the question. For the people who might have skipped the whole explanation about Zika virus, might have gone a few more seconds on the test. Something to watch out for. That is something that does pop up with the USABO. Not all the information in the question you will need. In the classic immune response, blah, blah, blah. That's going to be a bit of like a memorization thing. Do you know your facts about the immune response? All right, let me check that question in the chat. Individual or group? This is an individual competition. You're taking the test by yourself, 50 minutes, 50 questions by yourself. Moving on to next rounds with national and all that, that's all individual. Of course, you're representing your school and maybe your nation. So there's that, but it's an individual kind of competition. All right, so that's question 2. Question 12 demonstrates another point. You might have the Roman numeral 1, 2, 3, and then you have to choose certain ones from the 1, 2, 3. That kind of structure appears on other tests as well. I know with the Physics Olympiad and Chemistry Olympiad, this is a structure that they have. And this does appear on the USABO as well. So you're going to need to know more than your plant info and more than your green algae info. You got to know all the facts about all of these. So it's like many questions in one. All right, with question 22, this is more of a problem solving kind of thing. So you will need to know how pH works in your artery system, in your circulatory system. And you have to reason through this particular question. You have to read about the specific circumstances and figure out what goes on to do so-and-so based on the question, what it's asking. One thing I want to point out is that with this question, you see that there's the answer none of the above. In this particular question, the answer is not none of the above. And usually with these kinds of questions, the answer will not be none of the above. But there are the rare cases where it is. It has appeared maybe a handful of times over the course of 20 or so years of this test, a handful of times. So that's going to be like 3 or 4. So quite rare, but it can happen. Just want to put that out there. All right, we're going to be moving on to national level questions, semifinal level questions, I should say. As you can see, diagrams are involved. Diagrams are also involved with local round questions. So don't let that fool you just because I didn't include it on the last slide. There are diagrams in both. And you might notice that questions, at least in look pretty similar. Basically more or less the same, except that, there's just 120 of them in the semifinal. So quite a bit longer. Here we have diagram, and this is involving biotechnology. Here we have gel electrophoresis, SDS page. So you have to know some specifics about that particular biotechnology. Here we have some heredity, www, things like that. You'll have to find out what kind of heredity is going on here. Maybe it's dominant epistasis, or maybe it's gene interaction. There's a variety of things beyond your normal, oh, it's dominant, oh, it's allele. There's quite a bit going on with this particular question. Similar to the past question number 22, this is a problem-solving kind of question. Here we have a question style that I think has mostly appeared in more recent tests. It's a patient comes to your clinic and so diagnose his case and figure out how you can treat him. That kind of thing. It's almost like you're being the doctor. This kind of question has appeared more and more often in recent tests. And this is to test the human anatomy kind of side. Also notice that these questions, for the most part, they have A, B, C, D, E, 5 answers. For this particular question, there's only 4. If you're taking this test in person, there will be 5 answers for you to choose from. And of course, don't choose E. So there's that. All right, any questions? What's the best way to prepare for this? All right, so I mentioned this a little bit earlier. Preparation and all that stuff, all my tips for you guys, that's coming in a later slide. Just sit tight. We'll get to there in less than 10 minutes. All right, any other questions? All right, let's keep on going. Oh, here's an FRQ question. This will appear on semifinal and if you get there, international rounds. So this is a sample FRQ question, and you can see the approximate length, what it's about. You usually have this paragraph explanation kind of thing. This one in particular is about genes and how they work, more of a molecular kind of basis. And forward primer, reverse primer. Now we're talking about biotechnology again. So in the FRQ questions, as you can expect, they're going to be incorporating different concepts from different fields of biology, different sides of biology, and they'll put that all in one question. So that's something to see. And keep in mind, each multiple choice question is worth 1 point. This particular question in total is worth 7 points. And that's because it's got so many more parts to it. And for C, outline the steps of a PCR cycle. So there's a lot of writing that goes into part C. You have to write down all the steps of a PCR cycle. So that's why this is worth 3 points. There's going to be a bit of evaluation on your part saying, how well do I know PCR? And is it worth writing all that work and using all that time to get those 3 points? Is 3 points worth it? That's going to be something you're going to need to decide on the test. And we'll talk a little bit about how do you do that in a bit. Why does PCR? This is all understanding what PCR is doing. Here you have understanding of primers, which is a part of PCR. So this is a bit of an understanding kind of question. I've seen free response questions that look completely different from this. I'll explain them a little bit. So sometimes a free response question, it might just be a massive chart with like 20 or so terms on your left-hand side, and it says, for example, it might be plant anatomy, and it'll say function, and it'll say location in a plant, and then you fill in all the grids. And then the question might say, each correct answer is worth 40 points total. Each incorrect answer is worth -1, which means you'll still also have to be strategic about what you want to answer. You want to be pretty certain about your answer before you put it down, or else you'll be racking up negative points like crazy. So that might be another kind of FRQ question that you might run into. There's also the really short ones, the short response. So you might see question 1A, B, C, D, and it'll have a bunch of parts, and it'll just be like, what mode of inheritance is so-and-so case? And then you'll just write a single answer, a single word or a single phrase like dominant epistasis. That might be 2 points for you. So these questions have all different kinds of styles, all different kinds of variations, and there's really no standardized way to do this except, just know your concepts really well. All right, the question in the chat. That's not a question, that's Gracelyn helping me out. Thank you, Gracelyn. There's our YouTube channel for Logistem Foundation. You can check out all of our other workshops there. This one will be going up there in a little bit too. So that's that. All right. Now we're getting to the preparation slides. So first thing that I've got to say, if I had to summarize my insight and my advice to you in one sentence, it's going to be early preparation is essential. This is not a cram-worthy competition. In particular, I've got to say USABO and biology in general, people say, it's more memorization based, chemistry is more logic based, physics is more math based, or things like that, right? For biology, yes, it is more memorization based. Put simply, there is a ton more to memorize and less emphasis on logic and math. There is, of course, math with your heredity and all of that, with your Hardy-Weinberg and things like that. But with biology, there's going to be a lot of memorization. And that's why this is not a cram-worthy competition. You cannot cram the amount of information, the vast amounts of information you're going to need to know for this test, not within a month. It's just kind of impossible. All right, I just got a question in the chat, private message. Who grades the FRQ answers? So there is a team of graders by the CEE, or the Center for Excellence in Education. They're the institution that runs USABO, and they have a set team of graders that have a standardized way of grading all of the answers. They have usually it's like a checklist. Oh, do they say this? Do they say that? We give points, 1 point for this, 2 points for that. They have a whole checklist full of that, and yeah, a standardized team of graders. That's for the FRQ. All right, let's keep on going with the preparation. Elements of preparation are right there on the left. You can see a textbook. This is the particular textbook that my school issued, and it also happens to be the one that many people recommend for studying for the USABO. Campbell Biology, this particular one is 10th edition. That's plenty recent. Excuse me. And you definitely want a detailed textbook. Whether you use this particular one or a different one, a detailed textbook is pretty much essential for the USABO, because you're going to find the vast majority of your information in this one book. I know for human anatomy, you guys might remember, human anatomy is about 25% of this test. And this book covers about 5, 6, 7 chapters of human anatomy. So a lot of detail for you to comprehend, go over, mull over, reflect on, and hopefully that'll help you do well. And another thing I want to mention is with past papers, those are online. You can probably search for past papers and you'll be able to find them. And if you find any, that's very good, because that's going to be a very essential practice material to use. So it's really through practice and practicing the specific USABO style that you might feel more confident on the test. And you wouldn't want it to be like you have all the knowledge and it's a confidence thing that prevents you from doing well, right? So that's part of what past papers help you with, in addition to finding potential gaps in your knowledge and things like that. So yeah, see if you can find any past papers if you're looking to take this test. AP Biology course, I list here, it's highly recommended. And I do say it's highly recommended because AP Biology does cover a lot of the content that's on the test, perhaps not in enough detail for you to really do well, but it gets you motivated and gets you on the right track for what you need to know. And I think it's 100% possible that you can study on your own without AP Biology and become an ACE at biology and do really well on this test. That is 100% possible, but I do think having that course there to keep you going, like in a motivation kind of factor, as well as going through all the content, that does really help. One thing I want to note about that point, though, as a bit of a warning, you probably do not want to be following your AP Biology course during your preparation if you're hoping to prepare for this test, because to do so means you'll be prepared maybe for this test by around May, and the test is in February. So you want to stay ahead of your AP Biology course if you're preparing for this test during the AP Bio class year. So AP Biology should be kind of like a review thing for you. If you're really preparing pretty intensively for this test, it's just going to be pretty light review of what you studied maybe a month, 2 months before on your own. All right, and materials. So I know for Olympiad, there's going to be a lot of Olympiad specific books out there, maybe on Amazon, of people writing, oh, I did so-and-so well in Olympiad in previous years, and I wrote this book for you. I can't attest to the beneficialness of any of these books. I myself kept to a more traditional kind of studying practice, a kind of schedule, so not so much on these books. So I can't specifically recommend any options for that. And I think it's definitely possible to do well without the use of 1,000 excess books other than your textbook. But perhaps some of them you might find it might be a little helpful to you. So you want to consider looking into that aspect. All right, we covered a lot on this slide, so I'm going to take a breather and see if there are any questions. Feel free to type them in the chat. Right. Just got a question in the chat. What books did you use to study? That's right here. Campbell Biology 10th edition. This is the main book I used. There's one other book I used before this. I think it's like Campbell Biological Principles. There's like a big frog on the front cover. That one is pretty much more or less the same kind of book as this Campbell Biology 10th edition. It covered a lot of the same concepts and things like that. I think it was a little more introductory. So I think it was definitely better to start out with that book versus diving right into this one. This one would probably be kind of intimidating, a little overwhelming, but that book, a little bit better, gets you into the door, and then this one gets you the knowledge you need. So, all right, a few more questions in the chat. Did you use any supplemental books that are recommended on the website? No, I did not. And I was able to reach top 400, which I think is pretty good. So I don't think supplemental books are not essential, completely optional, definitely possible to do well without, but it's there as an option in case you think that might help you. Nothing I can say specifically on that. I can't recommend any specifics. This is the one book I can recommend, Campbell Biology 10th edition. So that's that. I came in late. When did you start taking the test? So I started my preparation in October for this particular year of taking the test. This was actually the first year I took the test, so this year, but also this year as in 2020 October, and the test is in February. Why am I preparing in October? Like I said, you got to prepare early, and it's basically the only way you can get and really master and understand and digest all the information you need to know for this particular test. All right. Can you type in chat the book you started with? Not sure of the exact name, but it's somewhere along the lines of Biological Principles by Campbell, and you'll find a frog on the cover. So that's in the chat in case you want to reference it. All right. I couldn't hear you clearly. What was the name of the other book you read? That's in the chat now. Is advanced math knowledge and skill needed for this test? Okay, so that question is a bit more nuanced. I want to talk a little bit more about that. If I want to pin it at like a certain level, I'm going to say Algebra 2. Now, I know people's definition of Algebra 2 are a little bit different, but let's say quadratic should be easy peasy for you. You should be familiar with systems of equations. That should be a snap, because with heredity and with Hardy-Weinberg, you're going to have quadratics. You're going to have systems of equations, and you're going to be able to do them fast. 50 questions, 50 minutes. It's not a lot of time for doing a lot of calculations and taking time with them. So that's why I'm going to suggest Algebra 2. I definitely think it's possible to be able to do it earlier, but you might find yourself doing a bit of math preparation, looking into different kinds of math concepts you didn't know before. Maybe it'll be a little bit more difficult. So Algebra 2 is my recommendation. Slightly earlier, possible. That's what I have to say on that. All right. Any other questions? Did my parents help me for preparation? Not really. So my parents, they were supportive in my endeavors and learning the content and things like that. Not like, I wouldn't say like they were tutoring me or something. Both my parents work in the technology industry, not much biology there. So a lot of it was my own preparation. So you don't need biological professor parents in order to do well in this competition. That's not a thing. How about chemistry? Do you need AP chemistry? I would not say you need AP chemistry. There are going to be chemical concepts that you'll run into. For example, with lipids, you'll have to know, oh, so-and-so, like carbon tails are nonpolar. That's something you might encounter in chemistry. I think it's definitely possible to learn it outside of chemistry and be able to have enough of a chemistry knowledge to be able to do well on this test. So chemistry, AP chemistry in particular, I don't think it's necessary, but do expect to be running into chemistry concepts on a regular basis. Advice for prep. We're going to get to that. It's actually just after this slide. I'm just going through these questions and then we'll get right into that. Do you need to study the book back to back? Yes. I'll talk about that in the next slide. In which grade would you recommend to study biology honors? Fun fact, I never took biology honors. I took AP biology this year, and that was the first biology course I took at my school. And I did fine, I think. 97%. That's perfectly good enough for me. And definitely, I had the knowledge to feel comfortable taking this test and do reasonably well. So biology honors, probably earlier than 11th grade, maybe around 10th, 9th. Or if your school allows, go right to AP biology. I think that's also very reasonable, very possible to do. So if you have the option to go right to AP biology, I would recommend that. All right. The question flow has stopped a little bit. Let's keep on going to the next slide. So that's a biology joke. Perhaps you can understand the osmosis. All right, let's keep on going. So I'm first going to comment a little bit about the studying the book from back to back. If you search up online, go on like College Confidential and things like that, you're going to hear people saying, you want to study this book 4 to 5 times back to back in good detail, notes and all, and then you'll be able to ace this test. I've got to say, you do that 4 to 5 times, you're not going to have enough to ace this test, and you will not pass to definitely not top 20. So I definitely think reading the book all the way through once is pretty much essential. That's pretty much a prerequisite. And then a second time is definitely strongly preferred. The next times, maybe you'll get more information, but I'm not really sure about that. Why I say that reading the book 4 to 5 times is not enough is because the textbook does not cover every single bit of knowledge that you're going to need for the test. It's simply impossible. It's just not. There is a lot of information in there, but there's going to be things outside of the textbook that you're going to see on the test. For example, a research method that was harnessed in 2008, that might not even be in the textbook because of time constraints and things like that. So there's going to be some things outside the textbook you're going to need to know. And that's why we look at this first tip I have right here. For friend Google, you're going to be doing some Google searching if you're doing your studying, right? There's going to be concepts you run into on the test. You'll say you're doing a practice test. Second bullet, say you're doing a practice test and you find a concept you don't know. Search it up, honestly. Maybe look it up in your textbook, but chances are it's not going to be there. So a bit of Google searching never did anyone harm. And also on Google, you might actually find that taking the .com plunge, as I say, is going to help you find information that might come up later. So you might be searching up a certain lab method, say PCR, and then you're going to find something called RT-PCR, and you're going to be like, what's that? I've never heard of that. And then you're going to search that up, maybe watch a video, and then next time you take a test, RT-PCR might just show up. So there's that benefit to really looking in depth with the .com plunge, and you might just find some knowledge that comes in useful when you're taking a later practice test, or maybe even the actual test. So Google should be your ally here. Practice test. An exam a day makes your worries go away. It's poetic. Practice tests definitely help a lot. So if you're able to find official US ABO past tests, or maybe some other kind of good testing online resource, utilize it. That's going to definitely help a lot. Get ready to memorize. As I mentioned before, US ABO and biology in general, it's very memory intensive. Sorry. Just simply more memory intensive than some of the other Olympiads out there. So you're going to want to develop a way of understanding, digesting, and keeping track of all that information. You're going to need to find a way that best suits you. In the middle of this year, I was using Quizlet a bit. Basically, the Quizlet would just be a repository for me. I'd store different terms about the digestive system, for example. I store like a good 40, 45 terms there. And that's just whenever I need to consult something on the digestive system, I go right there and maybe I can find it. And that's how I use Quizlet for the memorization parts. You might find a better method for you. For example, flashcards might be your thing. That might be how you learn best. That might help. Go for it. So find your own way in tackling the different memorization parts of this test. All right, any other questions? Because this is a good time to ask about my experience, which I'll be more than willing to share with you guys. Any questions that you might have, feel free to ask. All right, I just got a question in the chat. I got several questions in the chat, my goodness. All right, how detailed do the questions get? For example, do you have to know every single part of the human body or like all the terminology? Quite a lot of terminology. So for example, I think best give an example to show this. I had to know the different parts of a grasshopper leg, and they're different from a human. So there's that. For biotechnology, you gotta know how it works. So they might show you a diagram and say, what's wrong with this picture, with this particular contraption? First of all, you have to recognize the contraption. Second of all, you have to identify what's going wrong with this particular thing. And there is quite a lot. I think it's definitely possible to really master it though. Definitely takes time, dedication, blood, sweat, tears. But you might find that's worth it. And I definitely think the studying that I did for biology Olympiad, it was rigorous, but definitely satisfying. How did you manage to find time for chemistry, biology, and math Olympiad? Advice on time management. I had a similar question in the last workshop that I did with chemistry Olympiad. So just to give a bit of reference, I play the cello and piano, two instruments, fairly regularly anyway. So there's several things that I like to took my time with. And I find the best thing to do is to kind of plan out what am I going to be doing at so-and-so time period, and then holding myself accountable to that. And then at the end of the day, I'll say, that's a job well done. I was very efficient today and got a lot of work done. And that is satisfying in itself. Not much more I can say about time management because it's really about finding your own way and your own style, because it's really, how do you want to live your life? How do you want to manage your time? But I think I've heard of many of my friends doing multiple Olympiads. I myself did both chemistry and biology, math a little bit. I did do math a little bit. But I think it's definitely possible to manage two Olympiads. It all comes down to how do you hold yourself accountable. At which grade did you take the biology Olympiad? This year, so 11th grade. That was my first year doing it, and I definitely think you can do it earlier if you want to. I'm honestly, the time was right for me, but I know many people who are prepared and eager and willing to take the test at 9th grade. That might be your style. So really anytime in high school, I say is a good time to take biology Olympiad. If you're in, say, 7th grade, you've got a bit of time. Maybe you want to start looking into a concept here or there. I wouldn't rush on trying to cram for the test. There's also the possibility you won't even be allowed to take the test. So take your time with preparing. Foster your interest in biology would be my suggestion for younger grades other than high school. Do they test on frontline biology topics? I'm not 100% sure on what you mean by that, but I'll take that to mean like recent developments in biology. They do sometimes test on recent developments of biology. One time they did reference, I think it was a 2009 research article. So there was that. You didn't have to read the article to be able to solve the question, but it referenced it and there were concepts in there that they tested on. So they do include frontline biology topics. I don't think you need to read every single research article. Maybe one or two would be helpful in, keeping your interest and things like that. And really feeling like you're into this biology thing. How much time did you spend each day to study for biology Olympiad? It kind of varied over time. Like for example, during Christmas break or something, I'd have a little bit more time. Uh, uh, so probably if that day is a study day, maybe a good 2 to 3 hours, somewhere around there. I think that's a decent estimate. Were you taking AP biology simultaneously? I covered this a little bit in a previous slide. I am taking AP biology. Well, I was. It's the summertime now, thank goodness. But in 11th grade, I was taking AP biology, and my score should be out in a few days, actually. But yeah, and earlier I did say I recommend taking AP biology either simultaneously or before you take the test. It does help a bit with not only your foundational knowledge, but also a bit of a motivation factor, because you got to study for the school class and test as well as for your USABA. All right, I think I covered all the questions. Any others? All right. What was your study schedule like? So I think let's start with, uh, I'll do a bit of a walkthrough. So with October, of course, you got to start somewhere, and I started with the textbook. That's probably a good place to start for most people because you gotta have some kind of foundational knowledge. So October to around December, January, I was reading textbook. Around December, I started maybe a little bit earlier. I'm not exactly sure, but around that time frame, November, December, I started taking a practice test or two, maybe like one or two every week at first, and then I'd find, whoa, there's a lot that I don't know. So I might go back to the textbook, read a certain section, reread a certain section, read it a third time, and then go online, befriend Google, search up some things that are more specific, not in the textbook, and then after that, it's practice tests. So practice tests, maybe 4 or 5 a week. Of course, it's not easy to keep up that kind of schedule because these tests, they're pretty long, especially with the semifinal. And on that topic, definitely start preparing semifinal tests early, because if you want to have a good chance at making the semifinal round and beyond, then you're going to need to be preparing semifinal before you even make the local, because that's going to be part of your study preparation. Because of course, semifinal, that's going to help you with the local round. And also, if once you figure out, say you make the next round, make semifinal round, and then you start preparing, you don't really have all the time you would want or need to utilize the test that you have usefully. So that's why I suggest jumping on that a little bit earlier. So there's that. Practice some semifinals, and then February, March took the test, got to the next round, and yeah, and then it was test-based. Taking the test, finding out what I didn't know, searching it up, making lists, I had this like 50-page Google document of facts that I needed to know at one point. So there's all that. Any materials you would recommend for middle schoolers? So we have an early starter here. With middle schoolers, jumping right into a textbook is not a good idea, because especially with the textbooks that I was talking about, Campbell and things like that, very dense. And I don't think that's a great way, first of all, for your interest, and second of all, I'm not sure really how much you're going to retain from that. So I'd say I can't. One thing that I think might be, I think, a very suitable thing for a middle schooler is perhaps YouTube videos, because videos are a great kind of immersive way to begin learning biology. And there's definitely some great introductory videos. I would suggest Amoeba Sisters. Let me type that in the chat before anyone asks for spelling. Amoeba Sisters, some of you guys might have heard of that YouTube channel. They do a lot of biology concepts in a very fun and engaging way, and also a way that's educational, that really expands your knowledge base. So things like that. YouTube channels like that, videos, articles, uh, I think mainly for interest more than anything else, but also to perhaps get some foundational kind of infos to say. All right, let's keep on moving. So that's study tips and suggestions. And this is my conclusion slide. I do suggest and recommend and highly encourage all of you guys to take the Olympiads, the USA Bowl. Whether you're currently in 10th grade or 11th grade, or whether you're currently 5th or 6th grade, once you reach that high school time, USA Bowl is a great test, and it more than just being about biology, it really emphasizes, first of all, kind of rigor to how you prepare and how you research and how you search, how you Google search, how you study, and all of that. So, and on top of that benefit, it definitely really encourages a true interest and passion for biology, one that I think is highly valuable, especially for anyone who's considering to continue with their biology or chemistry or any science understanding beyond high school. So that's that. And also check out our other workshops. Like I mentioned earlier in the presentation, we have 4 more workshops after this one. And if you missed any of the earlier 3, that will be on our website and our YouTube channel. So check us out at logistem.club, or you can check out our YouTube channel, also called Logistem. All right, this is the question slide that was meant to be, but we answered a lot of questions earlier, which is perfectly fine. After this slide, don't go yet, because after this slide, we have some sample problem solving. So stick around for that. Any other questions? Let's pause for one moment. Would you recommend the same for Chemistry Olympiad taking AP Chemistry? Yes, I would. Same thing with biology. It does help with your preparation. If you're planning to take the Chemistry Olympiad, do try taking some AP Chemistry and things like that. All right, let's move to some sample problem solving. So, there's my question slide, my bad. But let's move to some sample problem solving. How this is gonna work is I'm gonna show you guys a question, maybe 2 questions, and I'll give you guys a minute to kind of look at it, digest it, understand what it's talking about. Maybe if you're really good at biology right now, maybe you can try solving it. And then I'll talk a little bit about my reasoning, some notable things about the question, what you should be looking for. All right. First up, this is a question we looked at a little bit earlier, and we're going to talk about it in more detail right now. Also, feel free to private message me an answer or two if you want. That's completely up to you. All right, we're going to start talking about this question a little bit, but first I'm going to answer the question in the chat. Which science class did you take in 9th and 10th grade? So my school, up until recently, had a physics first curriculum. So what that means is we take physics first in 9th grade. So I took physics honors in 9th grade. And then in 10th grade, I took AP chemistry. 11th grade, I took AP biology. That's my science path. And next year, I'll be taking AP physics C. All right. Give me 1 second. All right, so let's talk a little bit about this question. As I mentioned a little bit before, this is a biotechnology question where we're dealing with the gel electrophoresis. So a lot of stuff going on here. They provide you a lot of information, actually. They give you the gel buffer and a bunch of labels, really. Samples, well, all this. This is actually just a different perspective, a different apparatus a little bit, but it's the same basic idea with this particular device. Notice that they say samples, so you don't actually know what to sample of. So you're going to need to use some of your own knowledge. You're going to need to know this device beforehand. So what's actually going on here is you have DNA samples and they're being sorted by size. And how that happens is that you have a positive charge here, negative charge here. The DNA sample is negatively charged, so it wants to travel downward, but larger DNA samples have to travel slower because they're bigger, and moving through a gel takes size, and it's slower for larger molecules. So that's what's going on in this particular device. Its purpose is to sort DNA molecules by size. So that means we have the positive charge here, the negative charge here. So positive means anode, negative means cathode. It's reversed for chemistry a little bit, but basically electrons moving out of here into here. So that's why we have negative charge here, positive here. This is the anode. So what we're going to have is B and D are going to be our correct answers. And notice that for some kinds of questions, there might be 2 or more correct answers. That is a thing on the USABO. Usually in the wording of the question, they'll specify. So here it says which letters indicate. That indicates there's going to be more than one answer here. Usually they might say for single choice questions, I'll say which letter indicates. So you'll be able to know. Sometimes they're a bit more ambiguous. So it depends on their question. Well, that's that. There's a tiny bit of reasoning that I did for this particular question saying positive here, negative here. Maybe you also memorize that's the anode, that's the cathode. That's definitely possible, or you can also reason through this particular question. So a lot to know just off the bat, but you can also do a bit of reasoning here and there. Any questions about this particular question? Let's keep on going. This is more of an example of a molecular kind of based question. What's the importance of this particular structure? All right, just got a question in the chat. Did you take AP Physics 1 or 2 in 9th grade? I took neither. I took Physics Honors. That was just a course specific to my school. There was a course called Physics Honors. That was the one I took. I did actually take the AP Physics C test, both of them in 9th grade, but that's beside the point. My class was Physics Honors. All right, let's talk a little bit about this question. You're just going to need to know this, honestly. But there's a bit more to just knowing the molecule than it seems. So when you perhaps you might learn about GTP as a molecule, and GTP does so and so, and you'll be able to know GTP adds a cap to the 5' end, blah, 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 right? But when you get this particular question, now you're going to need to be able to recognize that this is GTP. You're going to be able to recognize the guanine, recognize the backbone sugar, and recognize the 3 phosphates, the G triphosphate. So just knowing what GTP is not enough for this question. You're going to be plain confused because you're going to need to be able to recognize this particular molecule before actually be able to answer it. So with this question, you have molecular observations, a bit of chemistry, and also knowing what does GTP do. GTP adds a cap to the 5' end of mRNA by making that 5' triphosphate linkage. So a bit of knowledge, but also on top of your knowledge, you're going to have that bit extra. It might be a bit of reasoning, it might be a bit of chemistry, might be a bit of logic, maybe some math. Usually these questions are not just plain memorization. In addition to some recall facts, you're going to also need to be able to apply your knowledge, as with this case, a bit of chemistry reasoning, be able to see what's going on here. All right, here we have sample problem 3. This is about phylogeny. And I'll wait a few seconds first. All right, so let's talk about this a bit. Notice that it says indicate which of the following statements about the so-and-so is not correct. It does say is, so that indicates there might be one answer, but I do think that this wording for the statement is pretty ambiguous for the most part. There might be one, there might be multiple. So here it's honestly just, you have to know how phylogenies work, but on top of that, it's also reasoning through. So like, for example, with this particular statement, C is more closely related to D than to E. Yes, it's closer, but if you think about like, and set like in terms of time, they are equally far apart. So A is going to be considered a false answer, so on and so forth. You'll have to do that kind of reasoning. So in addition to knowing how to reason through phylogenies, there's also a bit of logic. In this particular case, there's only one answer, A, but I think for these kinds of questions, there can be either one answer or multiple answers. All right, let's keep on going. There's one last sample question. I know we're a little bit over time, so bear with me. Sample question 4. Notice the is, indicating there's only one possible answer. All right, let's talk a little bit about this one. So this is probably the most memorization / knowledge-based question you're going to get. This is, you have to know every single hormone here and know what they do. And that's about basically just the only way you can get this question right. Knowing that there's only one answer doesn't help you very much. It's a 20% kind of probability if you don't know what you're doing. So you have to know melatonin, that's involved with sleep, parathyroid, that's involved with calcium balance, but not with calcium phosphate balance, ACTH involved with energistics and arousal, oxytocin involves with, I think, the mammary glands, so that's during pregnancy, and prolactin also involved with the mammary glands during pregnancy. So E, that's correct. Stimulates the adrenal cortex. You often know adrenal cortex is involved with arousal, being energized, being stressed, things like that. This particular one is involved with calcium phosphate balance. Maybe you're thinking it's not really phosphate balance. I've never really heard of that. It's more calcium balance. Well, put it on reserve. Maybe it's B, maybe it's not. A gonadotropin secretion that does involve the sleep cycles. So there's that, and it's really mainly D that is like very false. So stimulating water reabsorption, that is antidiuretic hormone, ADH. You're going to need to just know that, really, and also know what oxytocin does. And oxytocin, this particular question means that D is definitely wrong. Notice that perhaps you might hesitate on an answer like B. You might be like, I thought it was calcium balance. What is this calcium phosphate balance? That's the perfect time to go to Google and search it up. Maybe you'll learn something new involving the parathyroid hormone and maybe beyond. So with this particular question, we have answer D as our answer choice. All right, so that basically wraps up my end of everything. I hope you enjoy. I hope this was educational for you guys. And any final questions, feel free to stick around. I'll be hanging out for a little bit to answer any chat questions, anything like that. But otherwise, have a great evening. And I really do hope this helps. And definitely try out the USA Bow if you're interested. Also check out Logistem. Logistem.club is our website and Logistem is our YouTube.